I say something that might be useful later. I guess I want to look then. I asked everybody to give a try on the leap year function. Here's our leap year function. And what we're going to do is take a look at that to see what that looks like, at least what I envisioned it. A lot of people wonder, is there only one right answer in programming? And the answer is no. There's lots of different ways you can come up with a solution to a problem. So if you have a different solution, that doesn't mean it's any worse or better than mine. I'm just saying it's different. I just show you the way I would do it, and most programmers would do it, I would say. But if you have a unique way of doing it, or one that still works and satisfies the requirements, is not too complicated and easy to maintain, then yeah, you can go with that. Yeah, so Tatiana, that's fine. That's cool. Yeah, so yeah, I encourage students to work together. I wouldn't encourage students to like copy from each other, just copy code and not understand it. But I find the most productive programming teams out there are two-person teams. You have one person coding, you have another person kind of looking over their shoulder saying, is that really what you wanted to say? Or if you get stuck, you have a second pair of eyes to look at it, because you know what you want it to do and you're reading it and you're just not seeing the error. Having that second person there to help you out is really helpful. All right, so let's take a look at what I set up in Replit for, I copied the code from those two source files, and I just basically recreated or created a Replit project out of that. And so I'm calling mine date starter. But here's the interesting part. Your tester has already been written. Okay, this is the tester. It looks complicated, but again, you don't have to write this. All you have to do is execute it. You just need to run it. But basically, what this tells you is this. It tells you that this is what the date class needs to do. What we do, I think, really early on here is we create a date. Here's our first date that we create. Now, some of the methods in our date class are static, so we don't need a date object to call those methods. Remember, static methods don't require an object, but once we start calling non-static methods, like down here, then we have to create a date object. But up until this point, we don't need to do that. One of the first things in this tester is to test if it's a leap year, right? So I'm just going to run the program. I'm not going to show you the date code quite yet, but I'm just going to run it so you can see what it does. It says enter a month number. Okay, I'm going to put in the month 3. So that would be March, right? And then enter a day. Let's do my mom's birthday, the 13th. Okay. And enter a year. Well, I think my mom was born in 1940. So quite a while ago. And I hit enter. And we'll see what we're trying to see is if it's a leap year or not. Is 1940 a leap year? I wonder, right? Now, remember, for a leap year, we have all these things to worry about. The first one being whether or not it's evenly divisible by 4. Well, 1940, yeah, that's evenly divisible by 4. If you do the math, you don't get a remainder. So let's see what we get. And it says, yeah, it's a leap year right there. It says that. Okay. So my leap year function is already working. But then I have these things. It says fix me, or say the number of days in this month is -1. What? That's not right. The month of March. The name of the month is fix me. Okay. So what I've done is I put the methods in there, but the methods aren't complete. And so anytime you see fix me, that means you've got some work to do to get that working. The number of days, the number of the month is -1. So we got that wrong. Then fix me is is the day number -1. Okay, so there's lots of things to fix. Okay, it's because our day class is incomplete. So here's the day class. I did complete the is leap year method. So if you gave that a try, this is how I might go about coding it. The first thing I do is, if we looked at our flow chart that we had on the board over there, there's our board. I know it's a mess, but what I did is I tried to recreate that into this method here. And so the first question we ask is, well, you have a problem with code like this, okay? And I wrote this code. What's the problem here? Anybody know what the problem with that code is? I mean, it works, but what's problematic about it? Oh, the screen share isn't showing the REPL. Wonder why. Okay, let me stop sharing and I'll re-share the screen. Screen 2, share. How about that? Can you see it now? It's stuck on this. Yeah, there it is. Okay, thanks, Brady. That is weird. Good thing I'm watching the chat. And then participants, yeah. Okay, so the reason I dislike code like this is it doesn't tell you, it's not obvious what it's trying to do. Unless you're like an Uber programmer, you can say, oh, it's trying to see if it's evenly divisible by 4. But that's not easy to tell, okay? So what you want to do is when you see code like that, you want to put a comment in there. And you say like, check if year is evenly divisible by 4. See, now we can read the code and we understand what the code is there. We understand the intent of the code. So when you put comments in code, you're trying to answer the question why. I can see what it's doing. It's doing a mod operation with 4 and trying to see if the remainder is 0. But that's not really why I'm doing it. I'm trying to see if it's evenly divisible by 4, because the only time you'll get a remainder of 0 is if it's evenly divisible by the number you're dividing by, right? So we're dividing by 4. So if we get 0 for a remainder, it's evenly divisible by 4. Okay. So say in English, when you have code that's like not very clear, always throw a comment in there, because you're really just helping yourself. If you were in a real programming environment, you'd be coming back 2 years later, looking at this code that you wrote 2 years later, and I go, why am I doing that? I have no clue why I'm doing that. I should have put a comment there. And then you have to go back and rework the thing to try to figure out why in the world would I do this? Okay, so we ask if it's evenly divisible by 4. So the year comes in as a parameter to this weird method called is leap year. It starts with a verb, is, or a question, is leap year. If you start with the words is, then it's usually a method that returns a Boolean value, either true or false. It either is a leap year, so it will return true, or it's not a leap year and will return false. Notice that the return type for the method is here, Boolean. So that returns true or false coming back. Remember, Booleans only have 2 values, true or false. So if it is a leap year, it returns true. If it's not a leap year, it returns false. We check to see if the year is evenly divisible by 4. If it's not, we know right off the bat that it's not a leap year. Every leap year at least has to be evenly divisible by 4. So we jump from here, since this is false, down to here, to this else. See how these match up. So you have to jump down here, and we set the return value to false, and then return false. So for those years that aren't evenly divisible by 4, we can weed those out immediately, because we know that they're not leap years. Here's the next one. We say, well, we know it is evenly divisible by 4. Next, we have to check to see if it's evenly divisible by 100, because in that case, it's a special case, like 2100. Okay, so our next year that's evenly divisible by 100 is 2100. If that's evenly divisible by 100, then, or if it's not, say it's divisible by 4, but it's not evenly divisible by 100, then we know it's just a standard leap year. So it's like 2020 or 2024. Those are standard leap years, okay? And we would return true because they're leap years. However, if it is evenly divisible by 100, we have one more check to make. And that's to see if it's evenly divisible by 400, because if it's evenly divisible by 400, then it's back to being a leap year again, even though it was kind of ruled out because it was evenly divisible by 100. So here we put another comment and say evenly divisible by 400. So if it's divisible by 4 and 100 and 400, then it's a leap year. If it's divisible by 4 and 100, but not 400, then it's not a leap year. This is what's going to bite everybody in the year 2100. On February, or I guess March 1st, since it's not supposed to be a leap year, everybody's going to think it's a leap year because they're going to say, well, 2100 is evenly divisible by 4. It's a leap year. That's what most people think the algorithm is, and that's not correct. And so a lot of programs are going to get it wrong. And then they're going to think there's a February 29th when there isn't one. And the date's March 1st, and now all their systems break. But not our leap year function. Our leap year function is coded correctly. Okay, so if it is divisible by 400, then it's a leap year again. If it's not, it was divisible by 100, that means it's not a leap year. So year 2100, 2200, 2300, those are all not leap years. Finally, when you get to 2400, that's a leap year again. But again, we don't care because we'll all be dead. That's Mr. B's dark sense of humor. All right, so that's your leap year function is leap year. That's what it should look like. Or you can have something similar that does the same thing. Like I said, there's not just one way of doing this. Now, I notice I put curly braces in everywhere. I also did the indentation. That's important to keep everything organized. So you know what if statement is nested inside what other if statement. If you don't do the indentation, then it's really hard to follow the code as a human. The computer doesn't care. You could indent. You could just get rid of all the line feeds completely and just put it on one big long line, and the computer could figure that out. But humans need to see some structure, and so that's why it's structured this way. Is there faster, more efficient ways of coding this? Yeah, you can do this in one line of code. One line of code. It's a mess, and it's really hard to understand, but you can do it in one line of code. I'm not saying you should do that. I'm just saying that it's possible. All right, so our first test, let's test it out to see if it works with our test years. You know, we have there's four different pathways through this leap year function. So we want to test each branch to see if they work. So I'm going to run it and see. This is why you create a tester class, so you can try different scenarios. Okay, so I'm going to say, well, the month doesn't really matter, but I'm going to say month. The day doesn't matter. All we care about is the year here. So let's start with the year. Let's start with this year, 2021. Now, before you run a test with your test class, you always pause for a second and you say, okay, what do I expect? I expect this not to be a leap year. Yeah, that's what I expect. Okay, but if you don't have that expectation in your mind when you're running the test, it could fail. But since you didn't set a preliminary expectation, you say, well, it did something, it must be right. That's the wrong approach when you're testing. You have to have in your head before you run the test what the right answer is, so that you can see if the computer gets it right. Let's see if the computer gets it right. It does. It's not a leap year. Okay, so that's good. If I run it again, I don't care about the month again. The day, the year, I do care about. Let's do 2020. That was last year. We're trying to see if that was a leap year. That is evenly divisible by 4, but not by 100 or 400. So that should probably be a leap year, but let's find out. It's a leap year, yeah. So last year was a leap year. Wouldn't it be a bummer to be born on February 29th? Because like when you're like my age, you'd be like 7 or 8. Because you've missed all those birthdays. That'd be weird getting born on the 29th. Does anybody has a birthday on the 29th? Yeah, that would be weird. My brother and I share the same birthday. I was born a year later. Same mom. Okay, so we have 2 more tests to run if we're testing leap year. The next test is, well, what if it's the year 2000, right? It's evenly divisible by 4 and by 100 and by 400. Should it be a leap year or not? Well, I'm saying, according to our algorithm, if it's evenly divisible by 4, 2000 is evenly divisible by 4. It is evenly divisible by 100 and by 400. So it should return true. Let's see what happens. And sure enough, it's a leap year. So we got lucky. If you say you coded your program for the year 2000 and you didn't have this fancy version, you just said if it's evenly divisible by 4, it's a leap year. Well, they got lucky on the year 2000 because it just happened to be a leap year because of the 400 thing, right? But 2100, all bets are off at that point. Okay, so the final one would be one that's evenly divisible by 100, but not 400. So that'd be 2100. We haven't done that test yet, I don't think. So I'm just putting in random dates. And then 2100, this is not a leap year. A lot of people think this is going to be a leap year. It's not. And it says it's not. Okay, so when you test it, you want to test every branch. When you write a method, you want to test every pathway through this method. So we've gone this way. We've hit this return value. We've hit that one. We hit that one. We hit this one. Okay, so we hit this one when we said the year 2000. We hit this one when we hit 2100. We hit this one when we said 2020. And we hit this one when we said 2021. So we've hit every single pathway through this method. Okay? And now I'm pretty confident that this will work. All right. So now let's take a look at the rest of this and just see what's missing. I put in a constructor for you. If they create a date object and they don't specify a day, month, or year as parameters, then I'm just going to set the date to January 1st, 1900. It happens to be a Sunday, so it's a good starting point. Sunday is typically thought of as maybe the first day of the week, at least on the calendar, right? You know, you're looking on the calendar, it's the first day of the week. Not so over in Saudi Arabia. I was talking about Saudi Arabia yesterday. The first day of the week is actually Friday. That's also the day they take the day off. So nobody works on Friday. It's really kind of odd. When I went downtown in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, all the workers that do all the work, that's their day off. And so they're all downtown, and they're all not from Saudi Arabia. They're mostly from the Philippines. They do all the building and stuff like that. Here's another constructor, the day class. This time we're supplying the day, the month, and the year. So what we do is we have these instance variables, day, month, and year. They're here at the bottom. Yeah, there they are. Day, month, and year. They're private, right? We talked about instance variables being private. So when you create a day object or date object, it has a day, a month, and a year in it. Okay, those are the instance variables. So we have to initialize them. So we do that here. You take the day coming in and store it into this object's day. Do the same thing for month and year. Now, you see that there's some methods that have this in it, like this thing returns a string. And so what I do is if I haven't coded it up yet, I just say fix me. So if I ever call this, or if anyone ever calls this, it's always going to just say fix me. And then I also put a little comment over here on the right that says to do. I'm just trying to remind myself, hey, I need to write the method. Right now, I just have a placeholder. I've got this here, so it'll compile, right? It has to do something. It has to return a string, but I want to make it really apparent that the programmer hasn't programmed this yet. It's just an empty shell. It's a placeholder, basically. But this is one of the things we're going to have to write. Here's another one. This one I got you started with, and it talks about, it uses this thing called a switch statement. And this is what I wanted to talk about in detail today is a switch statement. How does that work? Well, say you pass in a month number in a year, it tries to figure out how many days are in that month. Now, most of the months stay pretty constant, right? You know, March always has 31 days. 30 days have September, April, June, and November. You know, I do that little rhyme in my head. Yeah, March is 31. With February, varies, right? February on leap years, it has 29 days, and then on non-leap years, it has 28 days. So 30 days have September, April, June, and November. See that little poem that you use to remember the dates? It's right there. And I'm using this thing called the switch statement. The way a switch statement works is it says, okay, you switch based on a variable, and it tells you which track you need to go on. Okay, some of the tracks have the same name. Like this track here has the same name for. So if the month number is 9, 4, 6, or 11, that means September, April, June, or November. Then all of those have 30 days. So I set this variable num days to 30, and then look here. I use this keyword break. Let me make this bigger so I can see it. See that keyword break? You have to put that in between your cases. If you don't, this logic keeps flowing through the rest of them, and you don't want to do that. You want to break out of this switch statement. So if the month number is any of these cases, then set the number of days to 30 and then bail out of the switch statement. Now 2, that's February, right? In February, in order to figure out how many days are in February, we have to know what year it is. So we use our isLeapYear function to tell us whether or not the current year that the user typed in is a leap year. If it is, if this returns true, then we set num days to 29, because on the leap year, February has 29 days. Otherwise, if it's not a leap year, then it's 28 days. So that's 2. But notice I didn't do the months that have 31 days in them. You're going to have to fill in that part, okay? So that's up to you to do. So you're going to create something similar to this, but you're going to list the months that have 30 days instead of, or 31 days instead of 30 days. So take that code and plop it here and change the numbers so it matches up with the months. Now, if you don't know the little poem, you might look at an actual calendar to make sure you get the months right. But say for some reason somebody calls this method and says 13. 13 is my month number. How many days are in the 13th month? And you're going, 13? That's not a month. There's only 12 months. What do you mean 13? So you need a default case here that will indicate something bad happened. Typically, you throw an exception here and say, there is no month 13. Program stops. But we haven't learned about exceptions yet. So the way we used to do it is we return something that looks completely invalid. How can a month have -1 days? Okay? So we return that so that if you ever see -1, you go, oh, there's something wrong, seriously wrong. I need to stop the program. Now, there's no way through the switch statement where there shouldn't be any way to get through the switch statement and not have number of days set. This default is your catch-all, kind of like that last else statement in the chained else ifs. This catches everything that didn't match up above it. And if that's the case, it's going to return -1, which doesn't make logical sense. And we'll tell the programmer or whoever's running the program, something bad happened. Somebody sent in some bad data. There is no month 13. There's no month -57 either, right? Or month 0. Month 0 is not valid. Our valid months are 1 through 12. If you don't put in a 1 through 12, you're going to end up here, and the number of days is going to be -1. Okay? So your job in this method is to complete this part. And I'm not going to do it for you. You've got a good example right there. All that stuff, just make sure to put in other month and change the number of days. But that's basically the structure. Here's another one. 2-month string. You pass in a number and it spits out what string belongs to that number. So if they, for example, they passed in the number 3, it would spit out the string March. If you passed in the number 11, it would spit out the string November, right? So again, I would use a switch statement, just like this one. But you'd have to do a different, I think a different name for for every month. So you couldn't group them together like this. You'd have to do one case at a time. Translate month takes the month and translates it back into a number. Say somebody typed in September and you want to change that into a number 9. This is the method that you would need to do that in. Here's a method that returns how many days it has been since the start of the year for a date object. It's called a Julian date. So if you want to figure out what day in the year it is, how many days have gone past this year so far, here's a method we're going to have to write that does that. And I'll show you how to do that. I'll give you lots of help on that. If you want to compare two dates, it's kind of like an equals or days between. How many days until we get to next Thursday? How many days is that? Well, this one needs to be defined as well. Here's our instance variables, right? So we already know that. These dates have a day, a month, and a year, just like most dates. And then here are your accessors and mutators. So remember, these are private, so you can't get to them directly. So you have to go through these accessors and mutators. An accessor is a get function, a mutator is a set function. So if you want to get the day, you call get day and returns the day. Set day, get month, set month, get year, set year. And that's it. That's the whole class. Okay. But again, lots to fill in. So what would I do? What would I do next? Well, maybe I let my tester kind of drive what I do next. Maybe I do that. So here I ask to input a month number, a day, and a year. And then it tells me if the year's a leap year. We've done that test already, so we're good there. We have everything we need. But what's the next test? Uh-oh, now it's going to create a date object out of that month and day and year that the user typed in. And then I want to print that out as a string. Now all we have is the month number, the day number, and the year number. But we want it to say something like for today, what's today's date? We would say June 11th, or maybe just say June 11, comma, 2021. So the year's the same, the 11's the same. The problem is the month needs to be translated. All we have is a 6. We don't have a June. You know, we don't have something that says June. So we need something that will translate from a number into a string, right? Well, we saw one of those functions here, and that's here, 2-month string. See that? You pass in a month number, and it's supposed to pass back a string that represents that. So I'm going to get you started on this one today. So if you can code along with me today, that would be great. I'll post this video also online in case you can't code right now, so you can try it later. But here's what I would do. We've got the method header set up. We want, if we pass in the number 6, we want it to print out June. So here I'm going to get rid of my little to-do statement because I'm actually doing the work now. Instead of fix me, I'm going to say something like, well, I'm not going to say anything. Okay, I'm just going to leave it incomplete. That means there's a string variable reference, but it's not referring to anything. So right now it's set to null. Okay, so that has a null value because we didn't create a string. And then we could use our switch statement here. Okay, we can say switch. Well, what are we switching on? Well, we're switching on the month number. Okay, so that's going to tell us which string we want. Now your switch statement needs to start with and end with a curly brace, just like an if statement would be. You got to do that first. And then you would do a case. You would say in the case, you say case, where the month number is 1. And then this is about the only time you use a colon in Java. There's one other spot, but you put a colon there. Okay? And then once you're there, I would indent one more level like that. And I would say, well, stir month, which is where we're going to store our output, is equal to, well, what month is month 1? We know that's January. It's usually capitalized, so we might as well capitalize it. But no, it's January. Look at that. But then this is the part a lot of people make a mistake here on a switch statement, is they forget to put in the break. Okay. Because you don't want the flow into the next case. Now the next case is going to be, probably February, right? And all you're doing is taking the month number and translating it into a month name. February is weird spelling. Isn't that a funny way of spelling February? February. English is such a strange language. I had to learn English from scratch after I moved here from Mexico. So there's funny words like that. Wednesday is really weird for me. February is strange. Or Wednesday. I don't get it. And then you put a break there too. Okay. And you keep going. But remember, what if you can't rely on the user to be intelligent? In fact, this sounds really harsh, but when you write code, you kind of have to assume the person using the code, well, it's not nice to say, but it's an idiot. It's called idiot proofing your code. Just assume your user's an idiot. What would you do if they put in a month number that was like 0 or -12 or something even worse? Obviously not a valid month number. So we would set a default case to be our catch-all. Now you'll do all the other months in here, right? Don't forget to do that. So maybe say here to do all other months. Okay, so don't moss. Don't forget to do that. But in the default case, you want to say stir. You want to somehow get the information out that this is not valid. The user put in a number that's not a month number. You would say invalid month number, something like that. And you'd also put a break here, put a break there. I know it's the last thing usually listed, but we talked about this, I think, before. The default can be anywhere in this list. So if you put stuff after, if somebody puts something after the default, then the break has to be there. I put that in there just to be safe. I forgot my semicolon there. Okay, so you have to fill in these other ones. But let's just see if we can do January and February, right? Right now it says the number of days in the month. The name of the month is Fix Me. Okay, so that's the one we're trying to fix right now. Let's see if we did that, at least for February, January, and February. So if I put in a month number of 1, day of 1, a year, doesn't matter. I've already tested leap year. Notice it says the name of the month is January. That means it worked. Okay, let's try it again with February. So February 2nd, 2022, whatever. And you see the name of the month is February. That seems to be working, but we haven't done 3 yet. So I'm expecting that 3 is not going to work. Let's try it. So the name of the month is invalid month number. So that's going to be really obvious when you run the program. You're going to get this, what, invalid month number, right? Well, 3 is valid, right? But if they put in like 13 or something strange, you would catch that and you would tell the user, hey, something bad happened. So your job then is to finish up this 2-month string. Why do we need this one done? Well, because we're trying to complete this one, 2-string. When you ask a date, can you write out what you are, but write it in words, not in numbers so much? We want it to say for January 1st, it would say January, the word January, space 1, comma, put a comma in there, another space, and then the year. In order to do that, we need to be able to take that month number, that's our instance variable, and convert it to a string. So now we can write perhaps this one. So let's try that. ToString. Well, the first thing we need to translate that month number, right? So I'm going to say, I'm going to make a few local variables. I'll say, I'll call this the date string, okay? It's of type string. And we'll set it equal, at least to start with, to yeah, 2-month string. It's a static call. So we say 2-month string. And we pass in the month number, right? So it'd just be month. That's our instance variable, I think. Is that what we called our instance variable? Let's just check. Called month, yeah. So it is called month. And that will give us, well, for February and January, it'll give us January and February. We haven't done any of the other ones yet, right? So that's the first part. And then we might then say, okay, now we need the day number, but we need a space as well. So again, we talked about using dates like this. You say date string equals date string plus a space, right? Because we want a space between the month name and the number, right? Plus, and we're adding on the day, right? So we say day. And then we add a comma and a space, because you have the month January 1, comma, space, and then the year, right? So that we add the year. And we're using the string concatenation operator to do all this for us. So let's see if this works. Yeah, so first we get the month number, and then we paste on a space, the day, a comma and a space, and then the year. And then instead of returning fix me, well, we've fixed it now. I think we're done. We can just say return date string, because we just built up this string. Now, some of us might be saying, well, wait a second. This is dates. You shouldn't use dates this way, where you build it up a little bit at a time. We just did a Mad Libs project where we used a string builder. That would be a better choice here. I'm trying to keep this as simple as possible. So if you want to try that, it would be preferable to use the string builder, because you're building up a string. That's what string builders are for. This is really inefficient. But if I run this now, my hope is that if I look at my tester class and looking for where I call ToString, now let's see if I can find ToString. I can't seem to find it. ToString. Oh, there it is. So what I do is I take that date, month, and year that the user typed in, make a date out of it, and then I convert it to a string. So let's see if it works for January and February. So here's the month number 1. Say I wanted to do 15, so January 15th, 2020. And note that we get January. Well, we don't get January. It says invalid month number. What? Didn't we do January? I thought we did. And then there's a period there. Why is that there? I guess that was in the error string. So it's not working. Our tester just showed us that there's something wrong. It should say January because January we put in our method, right? So let's take a look at that. Why is that failing? Yeah, 2 string for our first date. So we say take the date string, that's January. It looks like our date string, our 2-month string didn't work out. We passed in the month. The month was January. It should have passed back January. It didn't do that. So then I have to look at that and say, okay, well, why didn't that work? We passed in 1. We did put in January 1. It should spit out January. Do you see anything wrong, Jacob, at all? So I put in a month number 1. Let's just say January 1st, 2020. Yeah, see, it worked that time. Wonder why it didn't work last time. See how right there it says January 1st? Let's try February. We'll say February 29th. Well, if it's February 29th, it better be a leap year, right? So 2020 was a leap year. If it gets that one right. Again, invalid month number. February is valid. Oh, I know what's going on. Ooh, this one's tricky. These are really hard to find when you get bugs like this. We don't have a debugger, so it's hard to tell. But notice when we build our dates, we take the day, the month, and the year. That's not typically how we write them in English or in America. We usually do month, day, year instead of day, month, year. So it's mixing up. January 1st, it seemed to work, but January 15th didn't work because 15 is not a month number. We have our day and our month backwards when we create the date. Ooh, that's hard to find. So how do we fix that? See this first day, it says month, day, and year. The month is supposed to be the second parameter. The day is supposed to be the first parameter. So we have to switch these. So the problem is in our tester class. We're not building the dates right. Now, if this bugs you and you'd rather put it in American order, like when you go over to England or Europe, they always put the day first, then the month, then the year. Just depends on where you are in the world. So to fix this, you either have to change how you make the date here in your tester, or you have to change the order of the parameters coming into your date class. Now, if you wanted to be in the American order, just so we don't have this issue, what would be the best way to fix this? I don't know. Let's just fix it in the tester. So here we're going to say day first, because that's an integer, then the month, which is kind of European style, but we've got them in the right order now. Now when we want February 29th, 2020, we should get a valid string. Yeah, February 29th, 2020, or 2020. It figured it out that time because we had our day and our month inverted. Now it works for February. Does it work for March? Well, here's March 12th, 2021. Yeah, it says invalid month number, and that's correct because we haven't actually coded that yet, right? Here in our function that translates from the month number to a string, yeah, March isn't there, so we're going to get this one, invalid month number. All right, so going back to our plan for today, we have a 2-month string, right? We get a number and we convert it to a string. So we've learned how to do that, and I showed you how to code that. 2 string, we got that working, kind of, or at least for January and February. But then there's this other one called translate month. Go back then. We can find that translate month. This is going the other way. It takes the month and translates it back to a number. We're going to stop there though, because I think that's enough for today, and we'll pick it up there tomorrow, or not tomorrow, but Monday. That's where we'll start. And again, I'm going to walk you through this code. I'm going to do, show you an example, show you how to get you started on each of these methods, and then you're going to have to finish them up. But all you have to do is follow the pattern that I set. Okay. So this is the next one we're doing. But at least we've got some of this working, right? We've been able to get a couple of the months being translated, month numbers be translated. And we've got leap year working. Leap year's working already. That's cool. Next, we want to be able to print out all the dates, regardless of what day it is or date it is. We want to be able to print out all the months, all the days, all the years. And then we can try those dates in our tester to see if they work. All right, so that's all I have for today. Any questions before we call it good?